And the woman that came to me woman to woman threw that same rhetoric to my face.
Mm.
She was dating my partner for 6 months. I had been with him
6 months.
and I had been with him for 3 years. She swore they were in love and literally came to me and was like, "Well, I knew about you and knew about all the other women, and
Mm.
so maybe we had a a closer relationship than you and him."
Before I was a podcast host, I was a podcast listener. I'm still a podcast listener. That is one of the things that I do for my self care. It is how I decompress after a long day. It is how I spend my time on my commute when I'm alone in the car. I love to listen to a good podcast. One of my favorite podcasts is Decisions, which was formerly called Horrible Decisions. And one of the co hosts is named Mandii B. And that is our guest for today. And I am super, super excited to bring you this conversation. But before we hop into the conversation, of course, hello, welcome. My name is Dr. Cassandre Dunbar. How has life been treating you? But more importantly, how have you been treating yourself? Life has been giving me the 1-2 combo these days, but I am here and I'm trying my best to stay positive, to stay hopeful, and all of the things. And I'm not going to bore you with the details of what's happening in my life. Let's go ahead and hop into the conversation. Again, I am joined by the dynamic and unapologetically herself, Mandii B. She is not only the co-host of Decisions podcast, but she is also a co-author of No Holds Barred, a dual manifesto of sexual exploration and power. So in this conversation, Mandii opens up about everything from her evolving relationship with her mother to navigating love and sex in New York City to the difference between true intimacy and just hooking up. We talk about self-worth, forgiveness, therapy and the role that plays, and in the power of owning your story, even the parts that were kind of hard to swallow. And the power of owning your story, even the parts that we were taught to keep quiet. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the conversation. As always, thank you so much for joining. I am so glad you're here. Be well, sis. So, the way I like to start off is by asking you how you are PMS. So, physically, mentally, and
Ooh.
spiritually. You can go as deep or as not as you want to.
Ooh. Physically, my hips, baby,
What's
they've
going
been
on?
hurting. I've been trying to stretch them things out. But other than that, I feel good. Mentally, much better.
Good.
Um, there's been a lot of work things and
Sure.
just other things weighing on me,
Hmm.
which chapters finally closed in this last week and a half.
Hmm.
So mentally better than ever. Spiritually, funny you say that. I had a dinner last night with someone that I met last year in the south of France, and we had a whole conversation around spirituality and what faith looks like. And it was just eye-opening to like my views on how everything I've said has came about
Hmm.
maybe because of my relationship with the universe or my faith within myself. And
Hmm.
so spiritually, I feel like I'm awakened. And so
Ooh.
I feel like I in this year will be experiencing a different journey with my spirituality.
Oh, I love that. I love Awakened. Ooh, so good. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
And come through South of France. I love to hear it. I love hearing your journeys, like your travels. I'm just like, she does not sit still.
no, I literally leave for Malta next week. So
Wow.
I'm getting a lot done before I go there next week. So
Wow.
I started the year off in St. Croix and got to experience my first carnival,
Hmm.
which is interesting because I'm half Jamaican.
Hmm.
But outside of like carnival in Miami, I hadn't really experienced carnival
Yeah,
to that capacity. And so now I'm a carnival chaser.
I love it.
And so I'm experiencing carnival, which used to be in Ibiza and now it's moved over to Malta. So
Gotcha.
I'm so looking forward to that.
And I'm excited to hear if you'll share on the podcast, like how different it is in the islands versus in Europe. Because I didn't
Girl,
realize that they did it.
girl, let's be very clear. I'm sure it's gonna be very different.
Sure, sure. So I've been a listener of your podcast for years. And one of the things that I'm really grateful for in you sharing your experience has been a couple of things. You have always been, from an outsider looking in, somebody who's not afraid to just live, like, just let me just experience this, right? Um, do you think that there is something that in your childhood that allowed you to just be just open and willing to experience life and things?
My mom.
Yeah.
It's crazy because I just opened up to about how our relationship wasn't that great
Mhm.
growing up, but I really do now believe it's because she saw so much of herself in me.
Mhm.
And so it was just like,
Yeah.
you know, combating and headbutting with each other. But um I would say just that. I would say my mom was always that. Even though she had to work and couldn't be as free as she wanted to, I sensed it from her.
Mm.
Um and so yeah,
Yeah.
and then as soon as I could, let's be very clear because growing up wasn't the easiest. I left my house 2 days after graduating high school.
Ooh.
So 2 days after graduating high school, literally walking across the stage,
Mhm.
I packed up my '02 Hyundai Sonata
Okay.
and left my mom's house to move to Atlanta to be grown.
Mhm.
Um, and so I just always wanted to experience life
Yeah.
in that way. I just wanted to get out and venture.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you don't seem like you were afraid to make mistakes either. So I'm Haitian, right?
Okay.
And so very like because of my upbringing, like I was just afraid of all the things, right? I was so afraid to like make a mistake, so I wouldn't even try, right? And I feel like you are somebody who's just like open and like willing to experience life. And I love how just listening to the podcast throughout the years, I've seen so much like growth too. Do you think that the growth has been just you just growing up, you know what I mean? Or is it did your therapy journey play a huge role in that?
I would say both. It's so funny because I start the book off, right? Literally in my introduction, I talk about how when we're born on earth, when we're born into this world, we have very little control over anything.
True.
We don't get to choose our name. We don't get to choose the social class we're born into. We don't get to choose our family members.
Mhm.
And so for the majority of our growing up, we're navigating an environment that we have to kind of just learn how to navigate. We
Yeah.
have to exist amongst these people. My clothes and shoes were what my parents could afford, not
Yeah.
what I wanted all the
Yep.
time, right?
Yep.
The schools that I went to, um, my lack of traveling and exploring the world was all based on what my parents could afford and do for me. So I think as soon as I felt like I could be in control of those things, like I got my first job at 15.
Mhm.
As soon as I could find ways to actually have control of my life, I did.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I fucked up a lot.
And that's part of living, right?
I and it is, and I think that this book allowed me to forgive myself.
Mm.
So, unfortunately, I view my adolescence
Mhm.
as a person. I view myself in my 20s as a person, and now I'm who I am and how I exist currently. And for me, I'm learning how to appreciate
Yeah.
those people from my past and not
Yeah.
forget about them or not hate them or blame them or judge them. And so I think that is a part of where I'm at now with my journey
Yeah.
is knowing that she's all you.
Yeah.
Every decision, every mistake, every person was a decision you made, and I have to, like, learn how to just forgive that girl who didn't know
Yeah.
any better.
For sure, for sure. You know what I think about too? I think about how every single day, every I think most of us, we wake up and we're like, I'm gonna do my best today with what I know, with what I have, right? So even when I think about myself, like in my 20s and before, things that I used to like cringe about, I'm just like, you were doing your best, with
Mhm.
the info that you had at the time and what you thought was the best idea. And it may not have been because, that's just part of like the life experience,
Well,
right?
let's be also very clear, Cassandra. Unfortunately, we all think we know
Yeah.
everything.
Yes.
So
Yes.
in my 20s, I thought I knew that I was choosing the right men, that I
Mhm.
was doing things for me, that I knew better. And it's not until you really
Mhm.
have to deal
Mhm.
with some real shit that you realize, girl, you didn't know
Not a damn
nothing.
thing, like, you are a baby, like, I think about 19-year-old me, I'm just like, "19, oh my god, don't know nothing, thinking I knew
And
everything."
thought I had it all figured out
Yep, yep, and I
and
think that
didn't.
no, of course not. Of course not. So, now that you have been able to, like, forgive yourself for, like, mistakes and things like that, if you were able to meet 19-year-old Mandy, what would you tell her?
I would wanna tell her that she deserves so much more than what she's accepting. So when it came to my relationships with men, which also is heavily talked about in this book, and recently something I'm having a conversation with currently about my mom, like or with my mom,
Mhm,
it's I really sought validation and acceptance and placed worthy on myself based on how men valued me.
yeah,
Um, Me feeling my confidence was all fake. It was based on the attention I got and just the places in which I sought validation were very unhealthy.
yeah,
And I didn't realize how much I wasn't happy with myself.
mhm,
And I think that that was something I definitely learned in therapy, but that there was just a false sense of security
mhm,
in my looks, in my finances, and in how I existed. I could blame the patriarchy. I could blame, just having not the best sense of financial literacy and all of those things. But truly, I would tell my 19-year-old self to have a relationship with self before you go and just have all these relations with these
yeah,
niggles.
right? Right.
That that really in hindsight were so surface, were so minuscule, and was so damaging to my overall self, my
Yeah,
overall being, and how I existed. Um, and what's crazy is, Cassandra, you're asking me what I would tell her. I can't tell you if my 19-year-old self would listen. And I
okay,
and
that's
I think
real.
and I think that that's the reality, right? We have these older women that's been trying to
Yeah,
tell us.
yeah,
They've tried to tell you, "Baby, you give that man
right,
some pussy, it ain't gonna make him like you anymore.
right,
Baby, he's just telling you what he wants so he could do this." I've been
right,
there, done that. You don't really listen to anyone until you literally have that experience.
yeah,
And then it's like, "Now why didn't I just listen?"
right, right, right,
So
real
it's so crazy because I think there's so many things that we could sit here and tell our younger selves that
mhm,
if we really know who our younger selves are,
what
bitch, it
right.
wouldn't change a thing. It wouldn't change a thing.
But you know what? It brought you to where you are now, like, the decision that you made then helped you to become the one that you are today,
That's what I'm working on in therapy, right there.
so you've shared so much on the podcast. What made you decide that now is the time to actually put pen to paper and document some more things? So are you expounding on what you've told us, or
Oh,
are there
yeah.
new things that we didn't hear before?
Okay. So tea.
Okay.
I'm giving the tea in the background. So I just recently went September 2021
Mhm,
during the pandemic. Charlemagne reaches out to us and is like, it's time for a book, ladies.
mhm,
This is 2021. So if I'm not mistaken, I think Wheezy had just relocated to LA.
mhm,
We were doing the bi-coastal thing with our recording schedule. And 2021, I'm deep into this relationship
mhm,
at the time. Um, and I found my soulmate.
mhm,
And I'm like, ooh, okay. So mind you, this is also me about a full year into my therapy journey.
mhm,
So we get this offer. And so Wheezy and I think about what the book is going to be.
mhm,
And I think she shares this in our episode with our writer Tempest, but she really wanted an erotica.
Mhm.
She wanted it to be flat out horrible decisions,
Mhm.
essentially. This
Mhm.
is also before the rebrand conversations, before any of this. She wanted an erotica. At this time, I'm in a relationship. I don't really want to lean as much into sex
Mhm.
because I'm experiencing intimacy for the first time. I just said the L word for the first time. I got into my first relationship at 30 years old, essentially.
Mhm.
And so I'm just experiencing all these new things. And I'm like, I'm in therapy working through a lot of shame of the decisions I've made and
Yeah.
the relationships I've had and who I was. And it's kind of what I just shared. And Wheezy was very adamant, like, no, our brand doesn't believe in shame. You can't feel shame for
Mm.
the decisions you made. They're supposed to be empowering. And so honestly, for about, I would say a year,
Mhm.
we could not get on the same page with how we wanted this book to read. So a year goes by. Charlemagne agrees that there needs to be some element of our mental health journeys because sex brings about so many things.
Yes.
It's your relationships with other people, it's your relationships with yourself, it's the relationships with your body. And from your teenage years to your 20s, and at this point, we're both in our 30s, he's like, no, it has to include some element of your journeys.
Mhm.
And so we got to that part. Then it became finding a writer to help us with this
Mhm.
journey. And we specifically wanted a Black woman voice.
Mhm.
So we land on Tempest X, who's incredible. And when we get into writing this book, girl, it changed so much because Wheezy went from being single to getting into a relationship during us writing this book.
Mm.
And during this book, this person who I thought was my soulmate, we break up. He crushes my heart. I
Mm.
have PTSD because my relationship ends with a narcissist and I'm completely destroyed and don't know
Yeah.
what the fuck I'm supposed to be writing about. So,
Yeah.
even from our proposal to what the finished product
Mhm.
is a complete transformation because during the process of this book, we were transforming. We
Yeah.
were still on journeys.
Yeah.
And so this book went from like 4 chapters of my ex where everything was amazing, and the last chapter was I found love and I found my soulmate, to being where he's mentioned, he's sprinkled,
Mhm.
and the last chapter is finding understanding myself and loving myself.
Ooh.
And so it's been it's been a magnificent journey writing this book,
Mhm.
but the process, it is 2025. There you go. The process has been
It's
a
been
good 4
long.
years,
Yeah.
essentially 3 and a half, 4 years to get to
Yeah.
where we are today.
Ooh, my goodness.
And then I think throughout this process, knowing the difficult times we've had with placements and ads and all those things with horrible decisions, just the perfect timing to
Yeah.
go in with the rebrand of the podcast
Mhm.
and then the announcement of the book.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so that this book can exist in a way where we can have billboards. It can exist
Mhm.
in in airports and bookstores, and it's why we were so adamant on not placing our faces on the cover
Mhm.
because I essentially see this book as a mix between Chicken Soup for the maybe not the teenage soul, but I'll say the woman soul
Mhm.
and Zane. So you still have a
Oh,
few
okay.
you still have the
Mhm.
elements of sex in
Mhm.
there, but it's really through a lens of navigating life, navigating womanhood and finding your power.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, like, without you guys even saying that you guys are writing a book, we can, as a listener, see the journey, you know? And I want to touch on something you just mentioned. You said that this was the first time you experienced intimacy.
Mm.
For those who are listening, what's the difference between intimacy versus having a sexual relationship?
Okay, let me tell y'all, if y'all is not listeners of the podcast, I'm a bit embarrassed to say, but very early on in the pod, I could have sex and not kiss someone.
Mhm.
I could have sex and immediately roll over and not need to be cuddled. Um, I could have sex and give a man a pound and say, "Good job." Like, it was it was just like an act that felt good that was temporary, but most of my relationships with men and sex were transactional or situationships.
Mhm.
They weren't really rooted in mutual feelings, um, and maybe even not even respect, honestly, now that I look back at it.
Mhm.
And so when I got into this first relationship, everything that I realized I enjoyed was the cuddling, was the head rubs, was the massages, was everything that wasn't penis in vagina.
Right.
And so I was just like, wow, there's so many other things that are so beautiful about the connection between two people that isn't sex.
Yeah.
And a little bit embarrassed to say, but yeah, I didn't experience that until I was 29, 30 years old.
Mhm.
Um, and now it's completely transformed my relationship with sex because I'm just
Mhm.
like, oh, like after that relationship ended, I went back to my little Rolodex and was like, okay, let me call one of these men from the past that I know, can please me. And it felt empty.
Mm.
The sex felt empty, the act felt empty. I didn't feel as liberated about myself. I didn't feel as powerful. I was like, that felt empty.
Yeah.
And so after that relationship, it's been really interesting navigating what those relationships actually look like in hindsight, what
Mhm.
they meant, and moving forward, how I don't go back into that realm.
Mhm.
Because when I have sex, I felt powerful. I thought like
Mhm.
there were things that I craved and I desired, and I felt strong and that I made certain decisions for myself. And in hindsight, they maybe weren't all that way.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
now just the way I navigate, even from when I was single from that breakup, I'm back in a relationship now, but I'm just like, it feels so different.
Mhm.
And I love it.
So I have a question for you. So a lot of people like me listen to your podcast, and hearing your point of views and your experiences have helped us to like rethink what we were taught, right? What was it for you that allowed you to open up your mind? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
okay. So there's a whole chapter as well, and it's broken into 3 different times I went to, like, this dungeon, but I want to express the privilege that I have in spending my 20s and formative years in New York.
Mhm.
I just recently moved back to Atlanta, and Bible Belt, hun,
Listen, I'm in Charlotte. I get it.
everyone goes to church on Sundays. It's
Mhm.
a little bit more you don't have conversations about certain things.
Mhm.
Lifestyle communities
Mhm.
seem to be on the hush here,
Mhm.
and in New York, you just get to exist so free
Yeah.
in your sexuality, in your fashion, and how you dress, and how you express yourself,
Yep.
and I don't think I realized until relocating how lucky I was
Mhm.
to be in New York for the last 13 years.
Yeah.
And so New York is what opened my eyes to sex clubs
Right.
and poly couples and all of these different ways in which you can exist in
Yeah.
love and relationships. And yeah, just meeting the dopest, most open, non-traditional beings. To be honest with you, I feel like it's why Weezy and I are able to exist as 34-year-old, unmarried, unmothered women
Mhm.
because in New York, baby, it's $100 to step out your house. Like,
Listen.
so you're not even having the pressures of
Mhm.
becoming a mom because, baby, you just trying to figure out how to live on your own and not have a roommate
Yeah.
because rent is so expensive.
Yep.
And so to have peers in their 30s not having kids, those pressures of family building and all of that
Yep.
are lost. And it's just navigating your life,
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, and exploring the best city in the world.
Yeah.
And so just all of those patriarchal, familial, traditional elements of life
Mhm.
seem to not exist as much, or the pressure doesn't seem to fully be there in New York like they would in many other cities in the US.
That makes sense. That
Which
makes
is
so
why,
much
every
sense.
time I go back home to Orlando, it's like I'm running into people I went to high school with. Everyone's married, has multiple kids.
Mhm.
Some of them even with people from high school. And I'm like, Girl, I'm planning my trip to Europe. I'm going I'm going to Dubai for my birthday. I'm going here, and my life just seems so different.
Yeah.
And I can only say my sexuality, my freedom, all of those things are gifts from New York.
That's real.
They are.
That's real.
They
That's
are.
so
Which
real.
is why if you're a listener, all we get is, "Girl, where do I find a sex club? Where do I find these people?" And I'm like, "Girl, you in middle America. I don't know what to
Right.
tell you."
Right.
It's more difficult. Like,
Mhm.
use your Googles. I feel like ChatGPT might be able to help you with that
Really?
if it doesn't go against their code of
Right.
conduct, but, um, yeah, New York, you just
Yeah.
fall into it, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Speaking of sex club, I would love to know your first experience. Like, how did you even who introduced you? How were you introduced to it?
You ready?
Yes.
The nude beach. Exactly. So, I got invited to a nude beach by my friend who was creating, outfits for the girls in the strip clubs.
Mhm.
Uh, so she made all the outfits, and she, like, invited me, and I was like, I'm from Florida, so I've been to Hollover,
Mhm.
down in Miami. Like, I've been to a nude beach. My first nude beach experience was with my mom, and I was a kid. Let's be very clear.
Oh, wow.
My mom was taking me to a nude beach
Mhm.
as a child.
Mhm.
But as an adult, my first experience was I would say my first real experience was at Gunnison Beach, in Jersey. And again, my friend invited me. It took like 2 hours to get there.
Mhm.
I had to take the train to the ferry to a school bus, and then you got off the school bus and made a long ass walk to the beach.
Wow.
And there met lifestylers. And then they were like, "You have to come to"
Mhm.
at the time, the club was called Caligula,
Mhm.
and went there with my best friend for the first time. We were so nervous. It
Mhm.
was a BYOB. We killed a bottle of Don Julio before we got there.
I could imagine. Shoot.
And so when we got there, we each had 1 drink left and had to find someone else to share that. We were so nervous, and it was just like, "Wow, we're here." And it was great. I played around with a woman, and at this time, I was I was a real BBW, and so I saw other women that looked like me.
Mhm.
It was a great experience, and then from there, clearly, I've elevated to being lifetime members at members only clubs now, so
Wow.
shout
Wow.
out to Susia and NSFW. Um, and again, it's just garnering those relationships,
Yeah.
even with people that you don't have sex with. You don't have to go into a sex club and have sex. You could go in and it's just great to just talk to people
Mhm.
and learn about all the ways in which you can exist that maybe you didn't know you could.
Right, right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Um, so you talked about, just while writing the book, how you went through such a transformation, right? And you were with somebody at the beginning of the book, and now that the book has already been written, about to hit our shelves soon, you're in a new relationship.
Mhm.
Um, how different are you now? So the Mandy that wrote the book, how different is that Mandy from current Mandy in terms of relationships, like how you approach relationships?
Um, it's weird because I've found this new love and relationship with myself that
Mhm.
I don't wanna Tracy Ellis Ross this thing out, but I could be fine by myself.
Mhm.
I'm not a codependent lover,
Mhm.
um, and I just want to experience life with someone,
Mhm.
but I'm not in any rush, nor do I apply the pressure for my partner to be anything that he isn't.
Mhm.
And what's crazy is, in my last chapter, I express the type of relationship I want and how I want my partner to show up and how I don't want them to need me. I want them to want me. I want to want them. And I just did the audible version of this book. And as I was reading that last chapter, I'm like, bitch, did I manifest this nigga? Because the way in which he currently shows up and
Mhm.
allowing me to be who I am. And I genuinely feel like he's just, you know, he adores me. And I'm like, I wrote this in my last chapter
Mm.
of what my next partner would be and how we would exist. And he's that.
Yeah. Ooh.
So it's like, I'll be honest, I'm not far off from the person who wrote the book.
Mhm.
Um, I and I really read myself in this book. There's a few chapters where it's like, "Bitch, you were pathetic. Bitch, you were wrong. Bitch, you're disgusting."
Not
Like, and
disgusting.
I speak to myself in a way where, again, in hindsight, it's like, even like I have a whole chapter, and again, if you listen to the pod, for a lot of years, I was so fine with being the side chick.
Mm.
I was so fine with dealing with married men.
Mhm.
And what I realized was it was because it was my own insecurity that I wasn't worthy enough to be someone's primary, someone's
Yeah.
number one. And so I settled with being number 2
Yeah.
or 3 or 5, like
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and I talk about the karmic moment of my own words hitting me.
Mhm.
So my ex cheated on me, and a woman came to me, woman to woman.
Mm.
And there used to be this thing that I literally said. I was like, well, these men had to care about me or like me or even love me more than their wives because they were their true, honest selves with me and they were lying to their partners. And the woman that came to me, woman to woman, threw that same rhetoric to my face.
Mm.
She was dating my partner for 6 months. I had been with him
6 months.
and I had been with him for 3 years. She swore they were in love and literally came to me and was like, well, I knew about you and knew about all the other women, and
Mm.
so maybe we had a a closer relationship than you
Mm.
and him
Mhm.
because you didn't seem to know all the things I knew. And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
"No, this bitch did not."
Oh my
And I was
gosh.
like, "Wow, baby, that stung." And it was like, "Ooh, the universe does." And literally, this logic and rhetoric that I existed on and stood
Mhm.
on was like, "Oh, bitch, whatever to make you feel better about yourself." But that was it's not
Yeah.
a real
Yeah.
logical way to think.
Yeah.
'Cause girl, what?
Yeah.
Girl, what?
But you grew though, because some people could have had that happen and then still like felt the same. Like they you know what I mean? We're not gonna grow from that. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think, like I said, I think the relationship with myself, and it's why, like, when my friends are with partners that I don't like or don't
Mhm.
like for them, you can't tell them nothing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, women are unfortunately with who they believe they deserve.
Yeah.
And so you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. And so unfortunately, that's what I realized about myself. I truly deserved. Didn't
Mhm.
I wasn't worthy of getting flowers or being treated in certain ways, or a man didn't have to,
Yeah.
put me in a high priority in his life because it was easy for me to just exist in a place that I felt comfortable or that
Yeah.
I felt like I could manage.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to be fair, I think as women, we do that. And
Sure.
so we end up with people that we genuinely think we deserve. And it's not until you find the love for yourself and
Mhm.
value yourself and place yourself in a place where standards does make sense for you because
Yeah.
that's what you deserve.
Right.
That's when you'll attract that. And
Yeah.
until then, unfortunately, oftentimes we end up in relationships with partners that give us exactly what we think
We deserve.
we
Yeah,
deserve.
and we're worth.
And so
Yeah.
it's not until you love yourself and know that you're owed so much more from any partner that you're gonna get
Yeah. Ooh, that is a word. My
it.
goodness, that's a word, but so true. And it requires just so much work, like we have to be so self-aware to like see all the things that we're burying and we're hiding from ourselves to like
Mhm.
uncover all those things and work through it. And it's a job.
And you
Ooh.
gotta unpack. You gotta
Mhm.
and I know it's so easy to say, "Go to therapy," but to be fair, my first 2.5 years of therapy really were present day.
Mhm.
Everything was how to navigate friendships, business
Mhm.
relationships,
Mhm.
um, whether it be with Wheezy, whether it be with my ex co-host, whether it be with network heads, whether it be with transitioning from corporate to entrepreneurship. It was really navigating life in the present. And it wasn't until getting into this book process that I was like, oh shit, I guess I got to tap back into
Yeah.
the
The
depths
past.
of the
Yep.
stuff that becomes difficult.
Mhm.
It's my abortion, it's my
Yeah.
relationship with my mom, my relationship with my dad, my
Mhm.
relationship with men.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, as someone who is bisexual, but very much more heteromantic, um, me and my 27-year-old sister, we are 7 years apart.
Mhm.
The fact that she's entering her therapy journey right now, saying the same thing I just talked about in therapy last year, where it was like, I don't have a safe relationship with men.
Mm.
And I want to unpack
Mhm.
what that is, how I can feel safe with them, and how I can
Mhm.
allow them in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And so to have all of these negative experiences, specifically with Black men, but
Mhm.
only desire to be with one,
Yeah.
is like, I have to allow room. I have to grow from whatever traumatic experiences I've endured, because not all these men are the same. But
Yeah.
wanting a relationship with a man and never feeling safe with one is a fucking uphill battle that so
Listen.
many of us have to
Yep.
go up, whether
Yep.
it's feeling assaulted by somebody, whether it's the relationship or lack of with your father,
Yep.
um, abusive past relationships.
Yep.
It becomes very difficult to move forward in healthy relationships when
Mhm.
all you have are these negative ones, and
Yep.
they just pile and build up and
Yep.
create this wall that then makes us these angry Black women, right? No,
Yep.
we have to break down those walls to ensure that we can move forward and have these healthy relationships with
Yeah.
the men that essentially we wanna be with.
Yeah, for
Unless you
sure.
don't, and then get with a woman, but
Yeah.
they got trauma and stuff to work through as well.
Right. Yeah, it's part of being human, unfortunately. Like, we come here with a clean slate, and then things just start to happen and happen and happen, and then we build these defenses to protect ourselves, but then those walls end up, like, hurting us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it is part of being a human.
Yeah.
What was your favorite chapter to write about? Because yeah, there was a
Ah,
lot of things you had to work through, but what was, like, you, like, look back when you were writing like, "Oh, this was a good time," or just fun to relive?
I would say it was the unicorn in Mexico story,
Mhm.
um, because what I ended up turning that chapter into, and how I was able to relive that moment and where I genuinely was, it was, I got to experience this because however my friends would have viewed me if they were on this trip, however society may view me, whatever the perception may have been, to just walk up and holler at this couple and buy them drinks and end up
Mhm.
sleeping with them, is like, oh, we don't realize how much public perception
Yeah.
and the idea of being judged limits our sexual experiences and
Yep.
exploring.
Yep.
And so that chapter is what it looks like shooting your shot, what it looks like taking away the ideas of what your family would think or your friends would think, or what society would label you, and just existing in the moment.
Mhm.
So that one was really fun to relive. Ironically, my easiest chapters to write
Mhm.
that I fully wrote and we had to cut it down because they were so long
Mhm.
were my 2 pain chapters
Oh.
on sexual assault and my abortion.
Mm.
And it's because my abortion chapter, for that one specifically, I hadn't spoken to my mom or my friend who helped me pay for my abortion
Mhm.
since it happened.
Mm.
So 17 years,
Yeah.
and I revisited how they felt during that.
Yeah.
So that one was, I interviewed my mom, I interviewed my friend, and it was like, "Oh my god, I never had this conversation with you." And it was steep and deep-rooted, like, guilt
Sure.
for this decision I made that impacted other people's lives, and there was a selfishness that once it was over, and I didn't ask how it impacted them until this process.
Mhm.
And so the abortion chapter was honestly, when I sent it to the editor, when the writer got their hands on it, very little got changed
Yeah.
from everything I wrote to what's in the book today.
Wow.
Very little changed in that chapter. That was probably my quote unquote perfect chapter. Like,
Wow.
read it and there were no notes.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. Talk to me about, like, briefly bring us, like, walk us through that. So you're about 16, 17.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was going into 11th grade.
Okay.
I had just spent the summer with my dad,
Mhm,
and of course, had all the freedom in the world because
mhm.
my dad was not daddying.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time, like, with Wheezy that summer, a lot of time with guys.
Mhm,
Um, and yeah, I go back to Atlanta
mhm.
after a summer back home in Orlando, and I know my body.
Yeah.
Ironically, I know my body. I'm like, "No." Mind you, it was with a gangbanger
Mm,
who, even in the process of trying to get him to give me the money,
mhm.
A, he didn't want me to have an abortion, and then he ended up g violating probation and going to jail
Okay.
in the middle of the 2 weeks of me trying to get the money.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, it was me revisiting that time and having the conversations with the people that were there in that time, and I
Mm,
was like, "Here we are.
yeah,
I have school. I have volleyball practice coming up.
yeah.
This has to be done." It wasn't a thought in my mind about keeping it,
Mhm,
um, and it was just such a short decision. So I
mhm,
think that chapter was also easy for me because there's no regret
mhm.
from having that decision, and I think it was such a powerful chapter to write with the reversal of Roe v. Wade
Yeah.
and how we're navigating the decisions that we can make around our body and
Yep.
how birth control impacts us. And me being in my 30s now
Yep.
and seeing, like, oh, girl, your life looks completely different if
Yeah,
you had that baby.
for sure.
You don't have the platform, you don't have the voice that you have today.
Yep.
I, and in
Yep.
my mind, I don't, because maybe I never leave Florida.
Mhm.
I stay with my mom longer. I don't
Yeah.
explore more. Like,
Yep.
I realized that that decision was so important to who I am today.
Yeah.
That ironically, that's one that I have regret. I have no regret around.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. That's one of my favorite chapters because
Yeah.
I poured myself into it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's so important. Like I appreciate that you have no regrets because it's so important to highlight how we need to have autonomy over our bodies because this impacts us in so like the ripple effects. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not just having a baby and then okay, you go about your life. No, it's life changing, world changing. Not only for you, but like for your mom and for people in your household in your life. Like everybody would be impacted somehow, right?
Well, I
So
think that
yeah.
that's what I said too. There were just so many conversations amongst my friends, with my mom, like, that taking place opened up my mom to sharing her, like, history and journey with her own body.
Mhm.
And then, like, my friends at the time, like, I wasn't the first person to apparently
Mhm.
have had an abortion at that time. Like, I had one friend that had one before me. I had a few that had some after me.
Mhm.
And now into an adulthood, like, there's women that can more so speak to it.
Sure.
But back then we were teenagers knowing
Right.
that we weren't ready.
Yep.
So it's been more interesting to see, like, women make those decisions because finances aren't right.
Mhm.
Me and my partner already have 2. We
Yeah.
can't do a 3rd one or that
Yep.
would impact our relationship. So to know that there's not a one size fits all reason as to why a woman chooses to
Yep.
make that decision,
Yep.
I just thought it was very important at this moment to highlight and include that into the book.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. This has been so good. I can talk to you just for hours and hours and hours. I just want to thank you guys too, because I think it's so hard as women to talk about like really personal things. And then you guys have a platform where you're just open to so much scrutiny about every decision that you make about your damn life. So thank you
Yeah.
for showing up and for speaking out because again, I feel like you guys have changed how I view myself, how I view others around me and just it's really impactful work. So thank you. Thank you for
No,
being
thank you.
you.
And I mean, all the mistakes, good decisions and bad, are now gonna live on forever in this
Yes.
book. But it's truly like this platform to now this book to being someone who could literally have a living off being myself, that's a
Mhm.
privilege in itself, but it's a part of like my purpose now. And where it's not the easiest, yes, being
Sure.
scrutinized for
Yeah.
living out loud.
Right.
Um, I know what our brand and what this book and the impact it's going to have
Yep.
for years and generations to come, that I'm like, I'm leaving something that I'm
Yes.
really proud of.
Wow, I love it.
And here's the thing, whether you know Weezy and I or not, whether you listen to our podcast or not, this book is for any and everyone. There's
Mhm.
a story told that you'll resonate with more. Maybe you'll see yourself in more of Weezy's stories. Maybe you'll see yourself more in mine. Or maybe you'll see your daughter or
Yeah.
your mom or your sister or your best friend in these stories and have just a better understanding in just all the ways in which we have to exist,
Yeah.
the pressures, the
Yep.
mistakes we can make. And so, no, I appreciate every question you've asked. Again, I want every woman to buy this book
Yes.
because I do think it is going to be one that like
Yes.
changes a lot. And
Yes.
I'm really proud of it.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
Yes.
Love it, love it, love it.
No holds
Really
barred. Make sure
excited.
y'all get that.
Yes, and you said June 24th, right?
June 24th, but it's available for pre-order now. Um, Pre-orders so important for us because it helps us become a New York Times bestseller. Pre-order counts matter so much for us. And so there's that. And then also we're taking this book on tour.
Mhm.
So nhbtour.com. Um, Literally from the pages to the stages is what I'm saying. We're going to be talking about it from a monologue aspect. We're still bringing kinksters and BDSM to the stage. Um, and we're literally just continuing to grow this community.
Mhm.
So it's always a great place to find new friends, to meet like-minded women and men in the space. And so I'm really excited to be going on tour for this book as well.
Yes, and I'll have all that information down below in the show notes as well. So go buy the book, pre-order the book, get one for yourself and for your sister.
Yes.
Call up your library, have them order a copy as well. Go
Definitely also support Black owned, women owned, queer owned bookstores.
bookstores. Yep.
We know that Amazon is easy with the click of a button, but if you could support your local bookstores, that's
Yep.
definitely what we're aiming people to do. Like, shout out to someone I just met her here in Atlanta. Um, at the Black Effect Fest, and
Mhm.
I forgot where she said she lived, but she literally bought her book from Bobby's, which is a Black-owned store in Philadelphia. And
Mhm.
so to know that she was like, "Y'all said to support these Black-owned stores,
I
and I'm
love it.
familiar with Uncle Bobby's. I bought my book from there." So definitely support
Yes,
your local bookstores.
for
Um,
sure.
Black-owned
For sure.
preferably.
For sure. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you for listening to this episode of Be Well Sis. If you'd like to get in touch with us, there's a link in the show notes. Be Well Sis is hosted by me, Dr. Cassandre Dunbar, and produced by Edit Audio. Don't forget to hit follow so you never miss an episode. Until next time, be well, sis.